Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of The Sauce, continuing with college football week 1, Battle of the Carolinas, the Duke Mayo Classic, or whatever they call it. North Carolina, South Carolina. South Carolina opens up catching a 1.5. South Carolina plus 1.5 is where it opened. Total opens up at 62.5. Let's get into it.
Welcome to The Sauce. The Sauce. Hey, get the sauce.
So action came in heavy on North Carolina in this one, and the line moved from 1.5 to 2.5. But since then, it's been coming in pretty even. As of Friday night, the tickets are about dead even, with a slight bit of sharp action coming in on UNC. Let's take a look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we're looking at South Carolina 37, UNC 17, so a South Carolina blowout. Keep in mind, I weight my model heavily to the last 3 games. And if you remember, at the end of last season, UNC was terrible at the end of the season, and South Carolina was lighting it up. So that's why it says that. So this should be a great one. 2-star quarterbacks in this game. We'll start with Drake May and the UNC offense. Last year, May finished second in the FBS in total offensive yards, while the UNC offense finished second and third in the ACC in yards per game and points per game. UNC also returns all 5 starters on the offensive line from last year. Not only is that going to help keep Drake May safe in the pocket, but also should help create some space on the ground as well. That's the good news. Now here's the bad news for the UNC offense. They did lose their top 2 wide receivers, and more importantly, their OC, and that's a big one, Phil Longo. He went and took the OC job over at Wisconsin. That's a huge loss. He's been with UNC for 4 years, and we know how good that offense has been under his tenure with Sam Howell those years and now Drake May last year. Chip Lindsey takes over the offensive coordinator job there, and that's a little bit interesting because he was with UCF last year, and they were 23rd in run frequency. UCF ran a run-first program. Meanwhile, UNC was back at 106th. As we know, North Carolina loves to throw the ball. To be fair, though, Chip Lindsey, before UCF, he was at Troy, and they threw the ball a lot. So I'm thinking the reason Chip Lindsey ran the ball with UCF so much last year was because of their personnel, because they had John Reese Plumlee at quarterback. But to be honest, for me personally, it's not the new offensive coordinator that worries me. It's not the wide receivers leaving that worry me when it comes to the North Carolina offense. It's the complete drop-off in production we saw at the end of last season. Check this out. UNC's offense started off last year on a rampage. Through the first 10 games of the season, they were averaging 40.2 points per game, averaging. But in the last 4 games, that number plummeted to just 20.1 points per game, exactly half. Weird part? None of those games were on the road. 2 home games and 2 neutral site games. So what the hell happened? Well, if you take a look at the teams they played at the end of the season in those last 4 games, Georgia Tech, North Carolina State, Clemson, and Oregon, 3 of them, Clemson, NC State, and Georgia Tech, their defenses all rank in the top 30 of effective pass rate and the top 40 of opponents' passer rating allowed. These were defenses that could defend the pass last year, and they were able to give Drake May problems. During that span, Drake May completed just 53.6% of his passes, just 5.5 yards per attempt. That's ugly. Just 227 passing yards a game, 4 touchdowns, 4 picks. So Drake May was lighting the world on fire for 10 games, right? But look at his opponents. Florida A&M, Appalachian State, Georgia State, Notre Dame solid, I'll give you that one. Virginia Tech, Miami, Duke, Pitt is okay, but Virginia, Wake Forest. With the exception of Notre Dame and maybe Pitt a little bit, those are some piss poor pass defenses. And at the end of the year, when he started seeing some tougher pass defenses, we saw him come back to earth in a serious way. Want to know what other defense fits that mold? Top 30 in effective pass and top 40 in opponent's passer rating allowed? The South Carolina Gamecocks. And if you look at returning production, things aren't great for the South Carolina defense, all the way down at 113th, just 48% of returning production on defense. But they bring back their star safety duo. They had 2 freshman safeties last year that were awesome. Obviously, they're both back. They're only sophomores. So the secondary is still going to be one of the best in the SEC East. Not that South Carolina's defense was great last year. In fact, it was pretty bad. It was rated 52nd overall according to Beta Rank. But it wasn't the pass defense's fault. South Carolina was rated 29th in effective pass, 39th in passer rating allowed, 33rd in yards per attempt, and 26th in takeaways. This was not a pass defense to test. Unfortunately for South Carolina, teams knew better than to test them through the air, and South Carolina really struggled to stop the run, allowing 202.8 rush yards a game, 5.1 yards per carry, both bottom 20 in the FBS. They were sitting down at 78th in effective rush rate, and it only gets worse for the Gamecocks defense when you consider most of its D-line and its linebackers left. But the good news for South Carolina is the run game's not really really a priority for UNC, nor were they particularly good at it. UNC was 95th in run frequency last year, 73rd in yards per game, 76 in yards per carry, 54th in effective rush. So this isn't a rushing offense that should scare you. So yeah, the South Carolina front seven struggled last year and it took some losses, but the UNC rushing attack is not much of a threat. Let's take a look at the South Carolina offense real quick. Obviously returning two huge pieces, quarterback Spencer Rattler, wide receiver one Antoine Wells Jr. This offense took a massive leap forward. In 2021, they were basically bottom 50 in every single category, and they jumped almost 50 ranks or more in all four categories in 2022. And you know how Drake May and the UNC offense fell off at the end of last season? Spencer Rattler and the South Carolina offense did the exact opposite. In the final 3 games of the season, South Carolina beat number 5 Tennessee, then they beat number 8 Clemson, back-to-back games, then they almost beat number 21 Notre Dame in the Gator Bowl. Spencer Rattler's numbers during those 3 games: 1,044 yards, 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 68.9% completions, and 8.6 yards per attempt. My man was slinging the ball. And I have some more good news for South Carolina. UNC's defense, it's pretty awful. It's laugh out loud bad. Check this out. In 2022, the UNC defense ranked 100th or worse in the FBS in points per game allowed, passing yards allowed, passer rating allowed, takeaways, and sack percentage. They were brutal against the run as well, rated 92nd in effective rush according to Beta Rank. So the strength of the UNC defense is the run defense, and they finished 92nd. And it gets even worse for North Carolina's defense because this already brutal defense lost 6 members of the secondary, 6, to the transfer portal. They are decimated at corner. From what I'm reading, they're actually going to try to blitz more to help out that thin secondary, but if those blitzes don't get home, Spencer Rattler's going to rip that defense to shred. Before we finish up, let's take a look at some trends. I got some negative ones for North Carolina here. Just 4-8-1 against the spread at neutral sites since 2013. 1-4 against the spread in their last 4 at neutral sites. 2-6-1 against the spread as favorites last year. 2-6-1 against the spread as favorites. 1-7-1 against the spread as road favorites since 2020. So trends pointing heavily at South Carolina. And the trends get even more one-sided here. South Carolina's 8-2 against the spread in non-conference games under Beamer, 7-3 against the spread in neutral sites since 2013, and they've won 7 of their last 9 meetings against the Tar Heels. I'm definitely on South Carolina on this one. You don't have to wait for the live show. I'm not changing. I knew I was betting South Carolina in this game when last season ended. I really like what I saw from Spencer Rattler at the end of the season, so I'll take the 2.5 points. I'll take the money line. Give me the Gamecocks. South Carolina, let's do it. If you want my top bets sent directly to the phone and join the Discord, parlay of the day, if you're interested in that stuff, head over to KyleKirms.com or download the Sauce Network app. College football, week 1, first college football Saturday of the year. Gonna be a fun one. Remember to bet responsibly, and I'll talk to you on Twitter.